My daughter's name is Elowen. Right after delivery, she was just 100% perfect.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us.
Well, thank you so much, Chris, for joining me to talk about your beautiful daughter, Elowen. Please tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about you and your wife, Tate. How long ago did you meet her, I guess? Tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Sure. So we met in college in 2011. We both went to university in Alabama. We were friends for a while and ended up dating sophomore year of college and breaking up, and then getting back together again junior year, and got married actually a month after graduation. So graduated college, got married, started a new job, my first real job within a month or two of graduating college. So it was a busy time there.
Yeah, a whirlwind of new experiences. I remember when I was in college, it was sort of like a comfort blanket. It was like, yeah, I'm a important part of society. I'm a college student. And then all of a sudden
Yep.
you
So
graduate and you have to become a citizen.
out into the real world. So right after that, we had moved down to Panama City, and we actually we rented a small little bungalow for my parents. It was it was a shack. I mean, or almost a shanty, but it was cheap, and we didn't have a lot of money at the time. So we moved in there. About a year later, bought a house. Ended up about, I'd say, 3 blocks away from my parents. And when you're newlywed, that's a pretty interesting experience to live close to your parents.
Yes.
Um,
But I
let's
guess
see about.
it would be easy to go raid their storage pantry and stuff like, hey man, we don't have any food. Well, I know my mom and dad aren't home right now. Let's go grab all their cereal.
That's right. Yeah, when you need them for something, it's great. But you gotta set down some ground rules so they don't just come over and pop in anytime.
Yes.
But we were there for about 2.5 years after that, and moved up to where we are now in Alabama. At the time, I was working for a transportation company in management. And I'd say during that time, I think about that would have been 6 months after we moved to Alabama, we had our first daughter, Eveline. Uh, you know, and she was born, and we got a huge shock from the sleep factor. She's our bad sleeper of the bunch. So we had about 9 months, Tate especially, of you know 5 wake ups per night, and she still to this day gives us trouble with her sleep schedule. She'll be up and ready to go at 5:30 in the morning. So it definitely keeps us busy.
Isn't it amazing how little sleep children sometimes need? It's like you should be so exhausted. How can you still be going? I know
It's
you're
scary.
exhausted, but you're still going. You should be in bed.
Yes. Yeah. So she'll go to bed, I mean, let's say 7:30 at night, and be up and ready to go at 6 a.m. or earlier. And she will not seem tired one bit.
Ugh.
She's ready to go. And if you're not, I mean, it's just it's trouble.
Oh man. Early. I'm not an early morning person, so children.
Um, but yeah, so with her, I'll back up just a little bit. I actually had some fertility issues, which we didn't know how long or if they could be resolved. So we tried with her about, I think it was 6 months at the minimum, maybe a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was very to get pregnant with her, and just had a really normal pregnancy. Of course, she was born healthy weight, completely healthy, no NICU stay.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Textbook pregnancy, bring the baby home, perfect. Um, and then our thought process, I- we wanted to have more children. I think at this point we could see ourselves having 3 or 4. Is what we thought was a good number. And we didn't want too big of a gap
Yeah.
between the first and the second. So when our first daughter was, about a year and a half, maybe getting close to 2, we decided we'd start trying again. So of course, with the fertility issues we had, which of course they resolved
Okay.
after seeing a
Specialists.
specialist.
Yeah.
But and I went back to get checked out and see what was going on. But of course, we got pregnant very quickly with our daughter Elowen, who is our second child, and of course the one who was stillborn.
Uh-huh.
Again, super excited, tired, but super excited
Yeah.
to have our second daughter. Again, textbook pregnancy. Everything was going perfectly. Baby was developing. I was going to all the ultrasounds and the appointments as much as I could. Anyways, with the workload that I had
Uh-huh.
at that point, and we started to get, later on in the pregnancy, and we really didn't have any worries. Everything just went so smoothly with our first daughter. We assumed that's how things would go this time around.
Yeah.
And when we get to 34 weeks, which was when she passed away, no, we had no indication whatsoever, I would say, until the night before we found out.
Yeah. Now tell
And
us about that. You said until the night before.
yeah,
Like what were
Lee,
some of the
so
what were some of the
um,
signs?
we were sitting in bed, and in hindsight, we look at this and we say, you could probably say she was in distress, but
Mm-hmm.
we were sitting in bed, and just something I distinctly remember seeing was her foot just poked through Tate's belly, like out about an inch. I was like, whoa, that's weird, but that's cool. She's really active right now. Like
Yeah.
that's that's a good hey, she's moving, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what you want to see with a baby. Movement's good, not moving, not good,
Yeah.
right? So see her moving, again, kind of reassures us everything's good. Well, fast forward to the next morning. Of course, I go to work. Everything's normal.
Uh-huh.
Ended up going out to lunch with some coworkers. Take calls. Says, hey, I haven't felt Ellen move in like an hour or two. I think I'm just gonna go get her checked out just to be safe.
Yeah.
So okay, again, I didn't have. I really wasn't worried very much at that time. I mean, of course, when she says I'm going to get the baby checked out, like you have flashes of like worst possible scenario in your head. Everyone has these thoughts. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can't avoid
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
we had really no indication that anything was wrong, other than hey, we just hadn't felt her for a little while. So again, Tate went to the appointment by herself, which looking back is just a struggle. I wish I could have been there when she found out that Ellen had passed, but by this point, I'm back at work. I'm back from lunch, and she calls and says, she's just, she's sobbing, of course, and
Oh,
by this point, I'm just like, there's something majorly wrong. Like I can tell, when I picked up the phone and heard her because I knew where she was, and she told me they couldn't find a heartbeat. And just registering that, I, I think I just went into this mode where it's like, I've got to get there.
yeah.
Um, I've got to get there for her. I was about, I'd say 45 minutes away. So I hopped in, my work car and, just sped like a madman to the hospital. Of course, like there's nothing I can do like to help Elwyn, but it's just like I've got to get there,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I was dangerously to the hospital, and couldn't find a parking spot. Had to park in the parking garage, and of course, it's a long walk, and all these thoughts are running through my mind. I'm just dealing with something that I just have no framework for, and was not expecting
It,
whatsoever here.
it never
But again, I'm
enters. Yeah. It was like, it never enters a parent's head that this is an outcome. Even
yeah,
when you were saying like your mind goes to the worst case scenario, it it's not it yeah, it's just a
yeah. I
terrible
mean,
it's just a
it's
terrible
dismissed just as quickly because you can't live your life thinking about the worst case scenario for everything.
yeah.
So again, it's not something that I was trying to dwell on. But then, of course, it happened. You got to the hospital and went to your OB's office, and they had her in like a separate room. They had moved her because I've been to the OB appointments several times. They moved her
Mhm.
into, I guess, a special room away from you know other other patients.
Yeah.
Got there and just did my best to comfort her, and you know for my mind to just think through what had happened. I guess you just say I was in shock, but I had a somewhat singular focus of just trying to be there for Tate
Yeah.
and help her because of what just happened. Elwyn and her just had such a special bond being together, for those 8 months.
Uh,
So I just knew how I knew it hit her so much more quickly as well. Like it's different in a lot of ways, I think, for mother and a father because of the bond that mothers have
yeah.
with babies in their in their belly for that time. But anyways, they they gave us a couple options.
Yeah,
They said,
explain what the options were for you guys.
yeah, they said we could either be admitted right then or go home and come back the next day. Of course, we didn't have any of like the traditional baby gear that you show up to the hospital with,
Yeah.
you know, car seat, which we weren't going to need, obviously. And then, all the stuff that moms like to bring with them for the birth or for the delivery. And then, afterwards and getting ready to take baby home.
Yeah.
So we actually chose to go home. And I think, yeah, at this point, we were still in shock and didn't really know what to do. Of course, we didn't really know anyone that had experienced this either. So we went home, and I want to say that, you know, we sat on the couch for a little while, but we're like, man, like we just need to go do this. Like we
Yeah.
need to have this baby. So we started packing up all the stuff that we had prepared. I think most of it was already set up just because, we were expecting a baby in a couple weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, called the hospital, went back there, and we were admitted. And the process is just so similar to when you're having a healthy delivery and
Yeah.
healthy baby. It was striking the similarities. Of course, they get Tate all hooked up and start her on some meds to try to speed along the process of that delivery. And we're just we're there for a long time. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we ended up being there for like over a day before she was born, and just that time was just not, it was really, I guess you'd say somber, but difficult. You know, Tate's mother, she was there. Tate had a doula as well, who
Mm-hmm.
eventually she came for the delivery, and then the hospital that we were at, and this is a really great thing. They had a bereavement counselor, Marissa, who was there for the entire time,
Oh,
and she was
that's
great. She, this woman, she's seen so much stuff, just being the bereavement counselor, and she's seen so many, stillborns. She knew exactly what to do. She knew how to help us and take care of us. And I think if it weren't for her, that whole experience would have been drastically worse for both of us.
no,
Um,
that's very interesting because on our end, we had a bereavement counselor come in after the birth, and he talked with us for maybe 10 minutes,
mm,
and we had no I can't remember a single thing that he said. He left a packet, but my mind was in such a terrible place. I know he came in, and I have no clue what he'd talked to us about. So it's nice to hear that. What was your counselor's name?
her name was Marissa.
Marissa. It's nice to hear that Marissa was there with you the whole time, and that, as I hear that, that would have been a wonderful help in a situation that's just terrible.
Yeah, and she was there for the entire delivery, and even before that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm skipping ahead here a little bit, but Tate is still close with her, and talks to her quite
Oh,
often today, even 2.5 years later. Just a super invested in a person, and so kind. But so, anyways, we're in the hospital for about a day. It's time to deliver, right? So at this point, I'm just not a super emotional guy.
uh-huh.
Um, I can't remember the last time before that I cried, but just going through that, of course, when you get closer, the OB comes in, gets ready to deliver, and again, like this process is very close to what we went through with our first daughter,
Yeah.
who was born healthy.
Yeah.
Except there's no monitoring equipment. That's probably the main difference. And the nurses are still coming in and check on you, and you still got the IVs and everything like that. The epidural. It was just so similar. When we got to the birth, it was. I don't remember how long she pushed for, but I think the first like flood of emotion for me came right when she was born. And I just remember, you know, sobbing when I saw her come out and just saying why over and over again.
Yeah.
And I think, and this is this is pretty naive on my part, but when you're going through something like this, your mind just doesn't want to believe that this has happened. So of course I'm thinking, man, wouldn't it be great? Like, what if they made a mistake? Like there's that glimmer of hope that's just in the back of my mind, which is like the denial process of grief.
Yeah.
From what I've realized, it's not rational, but neither are you at that point.
In all honesty, that happened to me as well. Like, I knew for a matter of fact that all the medical professionals were wrong. No matter what they said, it was like they're just dumb, incompetent people. And my son, even though they say that he doesn't have a heartbeat, he'll come out and he'll just be perfect. And I couldn't accept it until my son was born, and then it was just just a crush. It was just crushing. And when you said it's just naivety on your part, I think if not every parent who has suffered a stillborn has thought those thoughts. It's just a cruel trick of the brain.
Yeah, you're right. Um, so of course she was stillborn. She was, and like I said about what I remembered about her in the first part of the interview here, she was over 5 pounds and she looked like a full term baby.
Uh,
So then the thoughts come across like, man, she could have been born yesterday without even a NICU stay.
yeah.
Perfectly developed, no issues whatsoever until the incident. So then you're thinking, hey, that's weird that she kicked an inch out of
Yeah.
Tate's belly. Why didn't I see that and say, huh, that's weird, that's never happened before, maybe we should get that checked out. Right, you start to wonder, hey, is there anything I could have done, or what could I have done? Well, hey, you missed the signs here. If we would have just gone in to get her checked that night, would have been fine. But no, you're tired. You don't want to go sit in the ER for an hour or two.
But you didn't know to look for those signs, though.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm speaking in hindsight. Like,
Yes, yes.
I'm sure I was tired. It was probably 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, it's yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, when I look back at it like that, there's just that guilt creeps in, and I
Yeah.
don't want that. I don't want to remember feeling that guilt, because, like you said, we couldn't have known. As far as we knew, a moving baby is a healthy baby.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, these are just thoughts that creep into my mind and have to be crushed before they before they turn into something else.
Yeah.
But so
Now,
she was.
I do have
Sorry.
a quick question. Elowen was born on the 29th. Was she born in the morning, the afternoon, in the evening?
She was born in the evening. It was probably about 5 or 6 at night. So, we'd gone through that whole day, and
Yeah.
just being in the hospital is exhausting to begin
Yeah.
with. And then
Yeah.
having to sit there and waiting around is just the worst part,
Mm-hmm.
because you're waiting for something terrible to happen. And that's not a good feeling. But I would say after the delivery, you get started. They start to treat you a little different, so you start to see that. Of course, we got to hold her
Uh-huh.
for a time afterwards, and that was really special. And I want to say one thing I did appreciate about the hospital is that they gave us the option. They said, hey, we can take her for you and give you guys a break, but anytime you want, you can request to have her brought back for you to hold her.
Uh-huh.
And we did that several times while we were staying there. But anyways, after you give birth, they moved us into not the normal healthy delivery recovery
Yeah.
suites. They moved us across the hospital into like this old kind of dingy hospital room. I'm guessing so we didn't hear all the crying healthy babies
Yeah.
around us. But again, you start to get treated a little bit differently after that happens. So I think we ended up staying there for about a day or two, just to make sure Tate was healthy and didn't have any clots or anything like that.
And then
Of course,
did you have, I know you said that the hospital would take her to let you guys rest, but were you able to keep her for as long as you wanted? And
we could, yeah. So and we're just so exhausted at this
Yeah.
point. We asked for we probably asked for 3 or 4 times throughout the stay.
Uh-huh.
Kept her for a couple hours, each time. Like I said, it's so exhausting being in the hospital,
Yeah.
and then having a baby that does not cry and doesn't need you through the night is, in a sense, more exhausting, because you can't sleep, probably even less than you do when you have a healthy baby.
Yeah.
But at this point, they're talking, funeral options with us. And you went through this. I mean, it's a sucky process to
It
have to
it
plan
really
that out.
is. Yeah. It really is.
Because then you're talking about, you get to talk about what kind of plot would you like, where would you like her to be, which cemetery you'd like her to be at,
Yeah.
you
Funeral
know,
homes, which service do you want to use? And it's like, I don't know. I'm
yeah,
I'm
and
a young
and you're
I'm a young
planning all
father.
this. Yeah, you're planning all this like you're in the hospital. You're not at the funeral home, right? So you don't
Mm,
see any of these people or any of these plots. So we ended up we we chose to have her buried, and I think we just wanted a place, a beautiful place that we could go
yeah.
visit her specifically. I don't know if we would have been able to do that, except for our church was just very generous, and a lot of people donated to cover the cost
Oh, that's very
entirely for everything from the plot to the casket to the services. So huge weight off our shoulder there, huge blessing.
that is a very
uh
very generous offering.
yeah, and we just saw a lot of grace in that, and I think that really helped with the healing process when we were talking about moving a few months down the road.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the biggest helps that we had, and at least for myself, just in the healing process, and seeing that. So of course, we leave the hospital, just the two of us, no car seat. I think we left one of our cars there since we drove.
Both
Well,
of
you know
you.
what? We didn't. I'm sorry. Yeah, we did, because I left my car there when we went back home the first time, and then we came back in one car, and then left my work car there because I wanted to ride home with Tate. Of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
didn't want to leave her alone. So I think I skipped a couple of details I want to talk about after the delivery. But both my parents were there. Tate's parents were there. Her sisters were there. So we did have quite a few family members,
Uh-huh.
that came in afterwards and were able to hold her as well. So I think that was good. We didn't, of course, even when you have a healthy baby, you don't want too many people visiting, just because of how exhausting it is to have company
It is
in the hospital.
exhausting.
So, anyways, we went home and grieved. We were. I was gonna take some time off work, and to be there for Tate and to unwind and unpack for myself. Family was in town. We try to get by ourselves
Uh-huh.
when we could, for the same reason I mentioned earlier. But again, there's the funeral to plan, right? So we chose some of the things when we were in the hospital, but now we've got to go to the funeral home and wrap everything up, and of course pay them the $5,000 or so that it was to bury her. So we get to that part in the process, and like you said, like I'm a young father. Like I don't know how to plan a funeral, but we went in there and did the best we could. And uh, of course, it's so frustrating just to be there. You the whole funeral industry just seems so, I don't know what to call it, but we it was upsetting. I guess I'd say, if
Oh,
there's one word to describe the process, it was just upsetting.
yeah.
And I guess now we're getting to the point where we're getting to the funeral. We had
No,
friends and family that came out to it. I'd say probably 20 or 30 people. We're gonna have a graveside service,
yeah.
and we actually had a viewing beforehand where the family could go in, and we thought it was important for our oldest daughter to see her
Yeah.
because she hadn't at this point.
Oh,
We didn't want to hide. We didn't want to hide what happened to her, and we wanted to be able to say that she had met
yeah.
her younger sister. So we went. We had a viewing with the family, and that was that may have been the most disturbed I was after the delivery, because of course they prepared her for burial, but she looked so different than I remembered,
Yeah.
and we were with her the last couple days, and she just did not look right. And I know it's been a few days since she was delivered, but there's like this heavy, like almost makeup on her, and the skin tone was just like not what all we remembered. It was hard to see her like that. I
Yeah.
mean, I took a few glances, but I was just not happy seeing her in that way. And I think it was difficult for Tate as well to see her like that. But of course, we do have pictures of the entire process, and I think that's probably one of the major things that I left out earlier about the delivery, is that one of Tate's good friends came and took pictures of the entire process, that we have to now look through.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really good thing for us to have those memories, that we can go back on, and Tate will look at them pretty often. I find it hard. I find it hard to look at those photos. I don't know exactly why, but when I think of her, I'm a visual person. I picture her in my mind, and I
Uh-huh.
think that's enough, and that's painful enough for me. And it helps me feel closer to her when I do that, just like it does when I go visit her at the cemetery. I feel closer to her. Anyways, back to the funeral here. It was the afternoon. It was overcast. Started raining, during the service. But I think the best part of that funeral experience for me, if you can say there was a best part, was when we pulled up to the graveside. They asked if I wanted to carry her casket down to, the burial plot.
Yeah.
Of course, I said yes, and I think that was a powerful moment of me, and it's a moment where I felt, maybe most in control of the whole situation. I was going to take my daughter and put her to rest. I was going to bury her in a sense. And I think just as a father and in wanting to do fatherly things with your child, for me, I think that was, it's one of the only fatherly acts this side of heaven that, I'll get to experience with her. And I'm glad I did. Whenever I think back to her, I think that's one of the moments that really stands out, and one of the fonder moments I have of, just being with her after she was born. I don't know what your experience was with
I
that, but
Yeah, it is one of those acts of services that as a father you could perform for your children. I got to carry my son Brandon to the graveside as well, and it's amazing how small the casket is and
yes, yeah,
how light it is, but the emotional weight as you are carrying your child for the last time to be laid to rest in the earth. I I I do, and going back to what you were saying, like we have photos that we have in a on the cloud that I could pull up anytime I want,
yeah,
and
same here.
it's very. It used to be I would look at them maybe once a week, once a month, and now my memory is what I turn to think of my son.
Mm,
And I do think about me carrying him to the grave, just like you did, Chris. It's one of those
wow.
the last acts of service I could perform for my son here on earth.
Yeah, and speaking of those, the photos that you mentioned again, we've got those, and we've also got a box of keepsakes that,
Yeah.
we were given. So we've got a lock of hair, handprints, footprints, a lot of stuff that you get with a healthy baby, which I think, like, as close as they could make the process to a normal delivery, the better it is for people that experience the things that we did. But going back to the funeral here, we had our pastor spoke, and then I read a short eulogy that I had written for her. And I don't have that with me today, but I could definitely look at sharing that with you at some point. And I think just moving past the funeral,
Uh-huh.
you're a different person after that. And I think one of the things that I noticed just moving forward was that I tended to get flustered or upset much more easily at small things. I distinctly remember like getting ticked off very, very
Yeah.
easily
Yeah.
afterwards. It's not that people were doing things that they didn't normally do. It's just that,
It just
hey,
rubbed you. Yeah.
my daughter's dead and I'm ticked off right now. So just
I know
eh,
exactly that feeling. It's the sad funny. I know exactly that.
mm,
The irritability is so fresh.
yes, exactly. And moving forward from that, I would still say, supporting Tate again, that was my prime concern. I think she feels so deeply in a lot of ways, and I can more compartmentalize that grief, which is good because I was able to be there for her. Even if I didn't say anything,
Mm-hmm.
I could just be there because I don't know what to say, Lee. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I knew I could sit there and hold her. That might have been the best thing I could do at that point, to be honest. And she'll look back and say, she'll say the same thing. As men, our wives wish we would communicate more sometimes, but I think in that situation, she really appreciated that I was able to just be with her, if nothing else, because she realizes I was going through the same thing.
Yeah.
I just experienced the loss as well.
Yeah.
So, and I think like looking back, we're 2.5 years out right now. I still think about her at least several times per week.
Yeah.
Um, and I think you and I, will always carry these memories and these powerful visuals, like you said, of carrying the casket. I think that's a good thing. I like being reminded of her, and I like in a sense feeling that pain and that raw emotion. I think in a weird way, I think that helps me feel closer to her. Is feeling that pain again,
Yeah.
and I think it's always going to be painful. The constant sting wears down over time, but the thoughts still bring pain, even you know several years after the fact.
Yeah. We're approaching 3 years. 3 years. 2018. So we're approaching 4 years, I guess. Oh man. But that pain is always, and like you said, I want to feel that every once in a while. I want to feel that raw emotion. I can't do it every day. I can't do it every week, but every once in a while, in the quiet of the night, I will purposefully remember the hard things so that I can feel close to my son. And it's not, I'm not doing it for spite, to feel the pain, the hatred, but I'm doing it to draw close to my son, because it's sort of one of those catch 22 situations. I don't want to feel the pain because it's painful, but I want to feel the pain because it brings the joy of my son to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that
Yeah.
same way. And I think one thing that's just really important, it was really important for us, as husband and wife, was to realize that we both grieve in very different ways.
Yeah.
So what it looks like for me is definitely not what it looks like for Tate, and vice versa. And I think just realizing that was a huge help in our grieving process, to know that we're were each different.
Yeah, very healthy to know that the pain and the grief looks different for each individual, and not to expect your partner to grieve the exact same way as you do,
Mhm.
and to give your partner the space and the time and whatever they need to grieve.
Yeah. So, for instance, like with Tate, uh, she started seeing a counselor after the birth. I went for a couple. Tate wanted me to go for a couple visits there.
Uh-huh.
Of course, that's not something that I was super interested in going to, but it really it helped Tate, and she went many times after the birth and still goes occasionally,
Mm-hmm.
and that's been a big help for her. And I think if I could say one thing about how Tate has taken this experience and used it for good, she started a support group for mothers that have experienced miscarriages or stillbirths or infertility, that meets together and talks through their stories. So I just think that's a great thing that she was able to do with the whole situation.
Yes. That is a very wonderful way to facilitate her grief. Do you
Mm.
find yourself reaching out to, or how do you help yourself? I guess what I'm asking is, because for me, I went to some counseling. It was very beneficial for me to find one of the sessions. The counselor said, you can feel all the feelings, but you don't have to hold on to them. And that was one of the real turning points, because I had this anger and I had no place to put it. So I just put it upon myself, this pain, this hate, and this anger. And my counselor, she said, you could feel that pain and you could feel that anger, but you don't have to place it on anybody or anything. You could then just release it. In the time, I couldn't think of that, but now that I look back at it, I was like, that was very helpful and healthy to just say, feel it and let it go. And
Yeah, so
I've
I,
told a
I
couple
think
other parents in our social circle, like, hey, it's okay to release it. You could feel it, you can experience, you could process it, and then just release it. And that has really helped me.
yeah, so when I think about that, I told you earlier I compartmentalize,
Uh-huh.
and I've always done that pretty well. And I said I was I was getting irritated easily.
Yeah.
I think that subsided on its own eventually. I went back to work, not long after the birth, and I think that was probably one of my coping mechanisms,
Uh-huh.
was just get back to normal, right? Like, I'm the kind of person, I can't just sit around and grieve. I want to be doing something, right?
Yeah.
I've got to
Yeah.
keep my hands busy. So I went back to work, and of course, eventually ended up leaving that company a few months later, which ended up being a great thing for me, just because the toll that work was taking on me, physically and mentally. So I like right in the midst of my grief and recovery, I started a new job, which I think like the change of that was really helpful and healing
Yeah.
to me. To have something like just have something new, right? I mean, it's exciting. It was a new career path I was starting, and this is only 3 months after Elowen was born. In a weird way, I think that was a big part of healing, just to have like a shock to the system and
Yeah.
start something new like that.
Yeah. The change can help facilitate, because you have to get yourself out and you have to change your thought process, and the change can really help, I guess, kickstart healing. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming and talking about your beautiful daughter Elowen. It was nice to talk to you, talk and hear your perspective on all that happened, all the good and all the bad that happened with this. So thank you.
Thank you, Lee.